Well, good morning, Canvas Church. Happy Father's Day. How awesome is this? Love celebrating dads. What an incredible day to celebrate dads in our life. I'm so thankful for the role that my father played in my life, in what he taught me as a young man and trained me to become a grown man someday. Really grateful for that. And dads out there, I just want to encourage you this morning. The work that you're doing is eternal. The work that you do matters. As Summer already talked about this morning, the way that you provide, that matters. The way that you protect, that matters. But I want to encourage you that that's not where our role stops. It doesn't just stop at providing and protecting. God has called us to lean in and to lead our families spiritually and to love them emotionally. So that is my hope, that each one of us, as hard as those other roles can be, my hope is that we continue to lean into those roles and let Jesus teach us what it looks like to be godly men and godly fathers in the people's lives that he has given us to lead. Well, if we haven't met yet, my name is Nate, and I have the privilege of serving here at Canvas Church, part of the team. I get to teach on a regular basis and love the opportunity to do that. If you're a guest, I just want to echo what Summer said already this morning. We are super pumped that you're here. Thanks for taking part of your weekend to hang out with us and spend some time. Now, we're finishing up a series. Today is the last day. It's part seven in a series that we titled Chasing After. And throughout this series, what we've been doing is walking through the book of Ecclesiastes. Super challenging book. Like, I don't know if you've been challenged by it, but I know that I have. It's been a challenging one to study through and then to teach week after week. But man, it has been such a rich experience. And throughout this book, what we've been asking each of us to do individually is to ask a couple of questions. Because this is what happens when you get into a series like this, and we've talked about this over and over again, is it's easy to let people come to mind that you think should be hearing this message, rather than leaning in and listening for ourselves and saying, God, how do you want to challenge my heart? How do you want to change me? What do you want to do inside of my life because of what I've learned in Ecclesiastes? So here are the two questions that we've posed week after week as we've worked our way through the book of Ecclesiastes. Number one is, what am I chasing? Like we proposed in the very first week, that everybody is chasing something. Whether you're doing it on purpose, whether you're doing it intentionally or not, you're chasing after something. And unless you pause long enough to kind of evaluate what is it that I'm chasing, it's easy just to go through life and it end up being meaningless in the end. And that's one of the teacher of Ecclesiastes, one of his favorite words is meaningless. So what am I chasing? And then once you can narrow in on or drill down on what it is you are chasing, the next follow-up question is, why am I chasing that? What has that promised me? What do I think that's going to give me in return? Like we're chasing something because a promise has been made by it or by somebody else somewhere along the way. And if we're not intentional, chances are we're chasing after something that cannot deliver on its promise. That's exactly what Ecclesiastes has been teaching us along the way. So this morning we are finishing up with part 7, and it is called Final Thoughts. Now, as we jump into our final thoughts, I want you this morning just to imagine this. You die tomorrow. I know that just got dark, didn't it? Some of you are like, I'm not sure why I showed up. But just for a minute, play along. You die tomorrow. But instead of a funeral, you get rushed off to a science lab down in the deserts of Arizona, where they rush you inside, and some scientists, they quickly cool your body down. They cool your blood with antifreeze. They change out all of your internal fluids with what are called cryoprotectants. These antifreeze that cool your body down to negative 320 degrees Fahrenheit. That's cold. They super cool your body. Then they take you and they put you inside of, I'm guessing, a stainless steel container where there you sit and wait. Just waiting. You're sealed. You're frozen in time. You're just waiting. You're not waiting for heaven. You're not waiting for peace. You're just simply there waiting for technology to catch up. For technology to catch up so that maybe, just maybe, you can avoid death. That maybe, just maybe, at some point down the road, you can be revived or you could be brought back to life. Sounds like sci-fi, doesn't it? It's not. It's happening real time. It's what's called cryopreservation, and hundreds of people have done it already. In fact, the first person to be cryopreserved, his name is Dr. Hiram Bedford. It was in 1967. They've been doing it for a long time. Homie has been frozen for a long time. 1967. He was a professor of philosophy, and he was hoping to avoid death. It's exactly what people do when they get cryopreserved. Their hope is they're going to avoid death. They're just going to skip past it. They're going to fast forward past disease. They're going to wake up in a future that fixes everything. No more sickness, no more death, no more sorrow, no more pain. Does it sound familiar? This is a promise that Jesus made to us, that one day he will do that. But for those who don't believe in Jesus, those who haven't put their hope and trust in Jesus, cryopreservation is their best shot at avoiding death, skipping past disease, waking up one day in a world where science and technology has fixed everything. Now, maybe you think cryopreservation is lunatic. I would be in your camp as well. But cryopreservation is just at the extreme end of a $74 billion industry. $74 billion with a B. And that is the anti-aging industry. The anti-aging industry is present today because we live in a world that is terrified of getting older. Terrified. So we throw dollar after dollar into this industry, and because we have this, we're terrified of getting older. We're terrified of aging. We're terrified of death. The anti-aging industry is absolutely booming. But it's ironic. There's an irony in it all. Because even when we try to freeze time, the future still comes. Haven't you seen that in your own life? Like you hope you could just at least slow it down. There are moments in your life that you wish you could just freeze in time. You could push pause on life. You could sit in the moment for a while. But at the end of the day, guess what? The future still comes. It still arrives. We can't escape it. So instead of trying to escape the inevitable, instead of trying to avoid what is sure to come, let's face the future the way Ecclesiastes teaches us to face the future. And it teaches us to face the future with three very simple things. Number one, fear God. Number two, follow him. And in doing that, we get number three automatic, and it's find meaning. That's really our sermon in a sentence today. That's the idea that we hope rattles around in your brain and gets rooted in your heart as you walk into the work week this next week, that you recognize, man, I am meant to fear God. I am meant to follow him. And when I do those things, I will automatically find meaning. And this morning, we're going to look at the text in Ecclesiastes. As I said, we're finishing up, so we are in chapter 11. We're going to read chapter 11, verse 9 through 12, 14. So there's quite a bit of text to cover here. And when we jump into chapter 12, verses 1 through 7, we find once again a poem. The teacher loves to teach in poem. As we said in the beginning, that you're going to hear two different voices when you read through the book of Ecclesiastes. In the beginning, we hear the author. He's the one that wrote down the teacher's thoughts. And then mostly we hear from the teacher, the one who kind of lived out this life trying to figure out where can you find meaning. And clearly the teacher was a poet because he gives poem after poem throughout the book of Ecclesiastes. And at the end of chapter 12, once again, we hear the author's voice. And he comes back in after a book that's pretty dystopic, right? It's pretty like it's a downer. He comes back in to help tie it all together and to help us understand why it is he wrote down what he wrote. So let's jump in. Chapter 11, verse 9. It says this: young people, it is wonderful to be young. Enjoy every minute of it. Do everything you do everything you want to do. Take it all in. But remember that you must give an account to God for everything you do. So refuse to worry and keep your body healthy. But remember that youth with a whole life before you is meaningless. Like you're young. Enjoy it. It's awesome. Lots to enjoy about it. But if you're worried about getting old, if you spend all of your time focused on getting old, you are going to miss your young years. Like I remember when I was a kid and we'd go on vacation and we'd have it was gonna be like 7 or 9 day vacation. And leading up to the trip, I was so excited, just anticipation for the trip. And this is gonna be so much fun. And then we would get on the trip. And as soon as we would get on the trip, then all of a sudden I started anticipating the trip being over. I ruined so many vacations worried about it being over when it was all said and done rather than just enjoying it in the moment. So the teacher was saying, listen, your youth is wonderful. I still think I'm in that part. We're going to read something here that might contradict that in a minute. But enjoy it. Enjoy it. Be in it. But also recognize that you will give an account, he says. So let's go on to chapter 12, verse 1. It says this: don't let the excitement of youth cause you to forget your Creator. Honor him in your youth before you grow old and say, life is not pleasant anymore. Remember him before the light of the sun, the moon, and stars dim in your old eyes, and the rain clouds continually darken your sky. Remember him before your legs, the guards of your house, start to tremble, and before your shoulders, the strong men stoop. Remember him before your teeth, your few remaining servants stop grinding before your eyes, or stop grinding rather. And before your eyes, the women looking through the windows see dimly. Remember him before the door to life's opportunities is closed and the sound of work fades. Now you rise at the first chirping of the birds, but then all their sounds will grow faint. Remember him before you become fearful of falling and worry about the danger in the streets. Before your hair turns white as an almond tree blossom. I told you it was going to betray me here shortly. And as you drag along without energy like a dying grasshopper, and the caperberry no longer inspires sexual desire. Apparently, it was a natural aphrodisiac. I'm not sure. I checked on Amazon. You could buy some today and check it out for yourself. It's like $18.99. Just throwing it out there. You can figure out where you were at on the scale. I'm going to move on. All right. Remember him before you near the grave, your everlasting home, when the mourners will weep at your funeral. Yes, remember your Creator now while you're still young. Before the silver cord of life snaps and the golden bowl is broken, don't wait until the water jar is smashed at the spring and the pulley is broken at the well. For then the dust will return to the earth and the spirit will return to God who gave it. Everything is meaningless, says the teacher, completely meaningless. See, this is the point at which we transition back to the author of Ecclesiastes. And he's summarizing what the teacher had to say. Everything is meaningless, says the teacher, completely meaningless. Keep this in mind. The teacher was considered wise, and he taught the people everything he knew. He listened carefully to many proverbs, studying and classifying them. The teacher sought to find just the right words to express truth clearly. The words of the wise are like cattle prods, painful but helpful. Their collected sayings are like nail-studded stick with which a shepherd drives the sheep. But my child, let me give you some further advice. Be careful, for writing books is endless, and much study wears you out. That's the whole story. Here now is my final conclusion. After all that I've studied about the teacher, after all that I've written down as the author, here is my final conclusion. Fear God and obey his commands, for this is everyone's duty. God will judge us for everything we do, including every secret thing, whether good or bad. The author hits the nail on the head, I think, when he says the words of the wise are like cattle prods, painful but helpful. And as I've read through Ecclesiastes, and maybe this has been your story as well, it's stung a bit. It's been challenging. There's been things that the teacher has said that's caused me to pause and to reflect, and it's painful. Pointing at things, looking at things in my life, recognizing I'm chasing after this, and why am I chasing after that, and exposing some things inside of my heart, my life that like I'm pursuing something because there's a promise there that just never can be fulfilled, and maybe it's been that way for you as well. The words of Ecclesiastes, they're painful, but helpful. It's kind of like in Proverbs where it says, wounds of a loved one are wonderful. The kisses of an enemy are harmful. This idea that those who love you the most, they're going to speak truth in your life. And that's exactly what Ecclesiastes has done for us. It has tried to speak truth into our life to keep us from living a meaningless life. Ecclesiastes isn't a feel-good book. Like if you were looking for something to like get you all pumped up and excited for the day, I don't encourage you to go to Ecclesiastes. There are other books you could probably read. But don't avoid Ecclesiastes. It's not a feel-good book. It wasn't meant to soothe us. Rather, it was meant to shake us to our core. It was meant to revive us, to get us up and moving. The author's goal wasn't to coddle his readers. It was to jolt them awake. He wrote Ecclesiastes to kill complacency. It was meant to pull us out of our apathy. Ecclesiastes was written, and it was meant to keep you and I from chasing the wind, from running after meaningless things. The teacher and the author wanted to keep us from wasting our lives chasing after things that in the end simply don't matter. And the final chapter of Ecclesiastes really drives this point home. It does it brilliantly. And it does it by calling us to one repeated command over and over and over again. In the last chapter, the teacher and the author says, remember. Remember. In fact, 9 times explicitly, it tells us to remember. This is just a fun little Bible study tool. If you come to a word that's repeated over and over and over again in a text or a book, it means the author is trying to get your attention. It's as if the author is screaming to us over and over again inside of this last chapter, remember, remember. 9 times it's explicitly, and then it's applied several other times. This word remember is a very important word. In fact, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago when we received communion together. This word remember, it's not just simply a word of look in the past or look fondly upon something. It means to recall it in a way that changes how you live moving forward. It means to look back on something and your remembering of that thing challenges you to live differently in the future. Another way to think about it is passionate fidelity. Because of what happened in the past, when I remember it, it challenges me. It encourages me. It inspires me. It empowers me to live differently into the future. See, yesterday, I got the great honor of marrying one of our past youth students. Met her when she was in 6th grade and got to hand her off in marriage yesterday, and it was awesome. And as we were wrapping up the ceremony, we go through the vows, and then we get down to the ring ceremony. And I get to remind them that the ring that they're putting on their finger, it's not just simply a piece of jewelry to be worn. It has deep meaning and implications. The idea behind slipping a wedding ring on your finger is it is a daily reminder of the covenant you made with your spouse. What does the ring represent? Passionate fidelity to the one you covenanted yourself with in your spouse. That's the kind of remembering. So when the teacher and the author are telling us to remember, they're not just saying, like, think about that one time you did that one thing. No. Think about the most important things and then how that directs your life moving forward. There's urgency in the teacher's command to remember. And this is where he starts. Remember your Creator now. Remember your Creator now. Like, now is the time. If there was ever a time to remember your Creator, sure, you could lament on the past and you wish you had done it a long time ago, but the past is gone. Whether we like it or not, the future is coming. And here we are in the moment. So in the moment right now, as we read this text, what is the teacher telling us? Remember now. The surefire way to not live your life chasing after the wind, not to live your life in a meaningless way, is to remember your Creator right now. He says, remember your Creator now before the future comes. What is he trying to tell us? Don't wait. Don't drag your feet. Don't assume there's more time. Don't kick the can down the road. Now is the time to remember your Creator and then live with passionate fidelity to Him. I remember when I was in high school and sharing the gospel with friends and talking to them about Jesus and what Jesus did for my life. And oftentimes the conversation would come up because they would invite me to do something that I wasn't going to do, I wasn't going to participate in. And it would always come back like, why don't you want to go with us and party? Like, this makes no sense to us, right? And I would share with them the love of Christ and how I find my identity in Him and I find purpose in Him and all of that. And it was baffling how many times they would say, you know what? Someday I'll probably do what you're doing now. But there's so much life to live, I'm going to do that at another time. What were they doing? They were kicking the can down the road. And every time they kicked the can, they didn't realize that they were just going to continue to live into meaninglessness. They were going to continue to chase after the wind. And that's why the teacher tells us, right now, remember your Creator. Now is the time. And now is the time, again, for these three things that we kicked this off with. And number one is, now is the time to fear God. Now is the time. Like, maybe you've been living as the God of your own life. You've been living as king. You get to call the shots. I hope you heed the words of the teacher in Ecclesiastes when he says, now is the time to fear God. And to fear God, I know that word, that terminology is a little bit strange in our vernacular because fear oftentimes makes us cower, right? It makes us run away, but I want you to picture fear in the way the biblical authors intended it. To fear God is to recognize the magnitude of who God is. Think about how incredible this Creator is. It's not a fear that drives us from Him. Rather, it's a reverence that draws us to Him, where we get to stand in awe. The fear of God, another way to think about it, the fear of God is the awe of God, where we get to stand in His presence and just be overwhelmed by His absolute goodness. To fear God is to recognize the magnitude of who He is. If there's a Creator who created it all, doesn't it only make sense that we would stand in awe of Him? I've stood in awe of some pretty amazing things. I remember standing on the edge of Niagara Falls and watching that wall of water roll over the edge day after day, after month, year after year, right? Century after century, just this wall of water, and just like, whoa, that's amazing. And to think that I get to be in the presence of Almighty God who created that. How awe-inspiring should that be? That's why the teacher of Ecclesiastes says, now is the time to fear God. Now is the time to stand in awe of the magnitude of who He is. And in that awe, we're meant to remember that everything we do, we will give an account for. That should jolt you out of apathy. That should wake you up from a slumber. That should make you sit up and pay attention to the way that you're living life. Everything we do, we will give an account for. It says, even the hidden things. Those things that you do when you're all by yourself. And you look around and nobody's there, and you think that you can do that thing, whatever that thing is. You'll give an account for that thing also. The places that you go, the things that you see, the stuff that you say, the thoughts that you have. It's terrifying a little bit, isn't it, to think that God Almighty sees even my thoughts? Everything, the teacher says, we will give an account for, even the hidden things. And friends, that should wake us up from our sleep. That should make us pay attention. Not out of I'm scared, but rather I'm fearful. I stand in awe of a God who created it all, and He sees it all, and I will give an account for it all. I'll give an account for it all. And remember, the reason why He brings this to our attention is so that we will stop living a meaningless life chasing after the wind, but rather we would pursue that which will bring us absolute satisfaction. And that's why He says the whole duty of mankind is to have genuine faith in God. Faith in God, simply put, one of the best definitions that I've heard, faith in God is believing He is who He says He is and that He's going to do what He says He's going to do. So this idea, the whole duty of mankind is to have genuine faith in God. When I remember who God is and the magnitude of who He is, that challenges me to live differently today. Because genuine faith always produces action. Genuine faith always produces action. It leads us to do something. We can talk about things all day long. We can talk about faith all day long, but if it is not challenging and changing the way that I live my life, it is not true believing faith. What we actually do is what we actually believe. So genuine faith always leads to action. And that's why it says, fear God. Then if you're truly fearing God for who God is, then you will begin to follow God. And that is the second point today. Now is the time to fear God, and now is the time to follow after Him. The teacher intentionally uses the word or the title Creator. He uses it on purpose because that name reminds us that he made us. He made us. If he is creator, guess what? We are created. And the creator always has what's best in mind. The creator knows the way that he created us to live. And how often do we sidestep the creator's design because we think we know it all? We think we've got it under control. We think we know best. You cannot follow God if you think you know best. We only follow God when we fear God and recognize him as creator of it all. If he designed it all, then he knows it all, and he's the one that knows best. So what do? Rather than going our own way, rather than rejecting him in rebellion, rather than living in disobedience, we surrender ourselves to him and we follow him as creator. It's as simple as this. If you've got kids, you know what it's like to give an instruction, knowing what the outcome will be if they follow, and then they disobey you. They do their own thing, and you just stand there. You're like, man, could you just listen to me? I've done this once or twice in my life. I have an idea of what you should do right now. Can you only imagine God with 8 billion people on the planet, all trying to do our own thing? He's got to be infinitely patient. If I was God, I'd just wipe us all out. When we recognize God as creator, we surrender ourselves to him. Why? Because he made us, and he knows best. So to remember our creator means dropping the illusion of self-sufficiency, dropping this idea, this false notion that we've got this thing under control. It means surrendering to him. It means trusting him, which leads to obeying him. It starts with surrender. God, I give you my life. I recognize I'm making a mess of it. I'm chasing the wind like I'm living a meaningless life. And this morning, I surrender myself to you. I give you my life. And for some of you this morning, that is the edge that you stand on. You stand at that edge wondering, do I want to surrender my life to Jesus or not? My prayer is that you make the decision to step over that line and surrender your life to him today. Why? Because now's the time to remember your creator. And for others of us in here, like we surrendered to Jesus. Maybe it was a couple weeks ago, maybe it was a couple of decades ago. It doesn't really matter, but we all run into this place of trust every day. Am I going to trust God? When I remember him, when I fear him, when I follow him, I run into every day opportunity after opportunity to trust him. And again, we might say with our mouths that we trust God, but here's what I want you to do this week. When you stand at that fork in the road and you know what he's calling you to, but you know what you want to do. True trust is when we obey him and follow him. When we follow him in every area of our life, when we follow him with our finances, when we follow him with our sexuality, when we follow him with our forgiveness, when we follow him, like there's so many areas of our life that we have the opportunity to do it our own way. Here's the question, are you actually trusting him? Because trust always leads to obedience, and obedience is following his lead. Following his lead. In the place that you can't test whether or not you're following his lead is the place that you and him agree with one another. That's not surrender. That's disagreement. It's the places where you disagree. That's the places that you determine, am I really trusting God? Because if I'm really trusting him, then I'll follow him in this arena as well. So now's the time to fear God. Now's the time to follow God. Because when we fear him and when we follow him, we will finally find what we have been chasing. And that's what the book has been written for, is to help us find meaning. Now is the time to find meaning. If we were to go around this room real quick and just ask everybody, like, are you ready to find meaning in your life? I'm pretty sure nobody would say, nah, I'm just gonna wait. I'm gonna kick that can down the road a little while. No, we all want to be pursuing meaning. Like we have a short time on this earth, we want it to be meaningful. And now is the time to find meaning. True meaning isn't found by avoiding death or trying to control time. It's found by surrendering to the one who holds time in his hands. Our future is facing us, whether we like it or not. We are moving second by second into the future. We cannot avoid it. And cryopreservation is not the answer. If you've been living a meaningless life in hopes that technology is going to catch up and that you get to do a redo on this life, listen, that's a bad place to put your eggs. That's the wrong spot. That is not the plan. That is not a great use of your time and energy. Fear God, follow him, because that's where we find meaningfulness. That's where we find meaning. When God is most glorified, friends, you and I are most satisfied. And as we wrap up, I want to read 1 Corinthians chapter 15. Not the whole thing. Verses 54 through 58. Because the Apostle Paul, he really captures this. It's as if when I read 1 Corinthians 15, 54 through 58, it seems as though Paul was looking back at the book of Ecclesiastes. He would have been familiar with it. It would have been part of the scriptures that he read on a regular basis. And this is what he has to say, verses 54 through 58. It says, then when our dying bodies have been transformed into bodies that will never die, this scripture will be fulfilled. Death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is your victory? O death, where is your sting? For sin is the sting that results in death, and the law gives sin its power. But thank God, he gives us victory over sin and death through our Lord Jesus Christ. Cryopreservation is not the answer. Jesus Christ is the answer. He's the one that gives us victory over sin and death. So he goes on to say, so because of that truth, my dear brothers and sisters, be strong and immovable. Always work enthusiastically for the Lord, for you know that nothing you do for the Lord is ever useless. If we want to live a meaningful life, if we want to avoid chasing after the wind, each one of us needs to give ourselves wholly surrendered to God in pursuit of his design for our life, because that, friends, is useful. That's where we find absolute meaning. Fear God and keep his commandments. That's what the teacher told us. Is a call to awe. It's a call to surrender, and it's a call to trust. Without God, life is absolutely meaningless. It's like chasing the wind, but with God, that's where we find purpose. That's where we find what we've been chasing our whole lives. Would you stand to your feet this morning as we close? I have one simple takeaway, and it's remember him. Remember him. This afternoon, remember him. This week, remember him. Let's spend the rest of our lives remembering who God is. And if you're here this morning and you've not thought about God in your life and you're wondering what it looks like to follow him with your life and surrender to him, I would love to have a conversation with you out in the lobby, out in the parking lot. Let's talk about what it looks like for you to surrender your life before you leave here today. I'm going to pray, and then Adam's going to come up, and he's got a couple of things, and then we'll be out of here. So, Father, thank you so much for Ecclesiastes. It was hard words, like a cattle prod. It wasn't comfortable. It was painful, but so helpful. And I pray that you would help each and every one of us to remember you day in and day out with the smallest decisions we make. We pray these things in your name, Jesus. Amen.